Recording in progress.
Good evening, everyone. I want to welcome you to the June 1st, 2022 Special Board of Aldermen meeting. Would everybody please join with me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Have this on? Alderwoman Tice absent. Alderwoman Sims?
Here.
Alderman Weggie?
Here.
Alderman Gould?
Here.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Here.
Alderwoman O'Neill?
Here.
Alderman Shelton?
Here.
6 members are present.
Thank you. Any changes to the agenda? Any objection to approving the same by acclamation? Seeing none, it will be so approved. Next on the agenda is citizen comments. If anybody in the audience cares to address the board, now is the time to do so. You will be given up to 3 minutes. If you want to, just come down to the podium, state your name and address, please.
My name is Gail Rock. I'm at 8505 Henrietta Avenue. And I'm here tonight because I understand we need a lot of infrastructure, and we are getting that. But on Henrietta, we have had a long time with this building up of our street. We have a lot of people driving down it very fast. 2 of us were out there yesterday yelling at drivers who were driving too fast. By the time we get done with school, we'll have around 6 or 7 kids running around my area. My easement in front of my house, I call it Mount St. Henrietta. It has not evenly been brought back to what it was before. It's muddy, it's, as I said, a mountain, several mountains. It's more like a mountain range. I would like people that are doing construction to finish the work. I would like the people in the neighborhoods not to be driving down Henrietta like it's a racetrack. I did see a sign today for the first time about that. It's so small, I almost missed it. Please don't drive fast, we're not a racetrack. We need more than that. A little small sign on a lawn. We need to start having a safer environment with the schools about ready to let out for our kids. I've almost been hit a couple of times, my car, because they go right through the stop sign at Henrietta and Hallen. We need to have this area be a neighborhood again and not a construction zone. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rock. Anyone else? Seeing none, we will move on. I'm sorry, Kelly, we don't have anybody online, right?
Yes.
Okay. We will move on then to, next on the agenda is the consent agenda. We only have one item under that. Any questions about that one item? If not, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. I'm sorry, roll call, please.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill? Yes. Alderman Shelton?
Yes.
Motion carries by a vote of 6-0.
Thank you. That brings us to old business, and we have one item under old business, and that's resolution number 1367. Who is presenting on that?
Dan?
Dan.
On this particular item, if you recall the history of this project, this is the MSD project that would be White, Bridgeport, Rosalie. Back in April, at the April 4th meeting, Resolution 1352 was passed, so that was for this temporary access road between Swim Club and White Avenue. And that allows Luth to go in between those 2 areas instead of being that you can't turn around at the dead end of White. So this particular resolution is The one that they're asking for tonight is to extend the deadline, which actually ended on the 27th of May, add another 2 weeks for them to be able to use this road. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. And I know that Luth is here to answer any questions
Okay.
for schedule or logistics.
Okay. Do we have do you have any questions about this? Anybody care to make a motion to approve the resolution 1367?
So moved.
Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Okay. Let's open it up for discussion. Alderman Wegg, did you have your hand up?
I'm sure we all have a lot of questions, so.
Well, fire away.
Yeah, I guess the most obvious one, and I've heard this from a lot of residents, is that, we approved this on April 4th, and then I believe 3 weeks went by before the egress road was in. I was walking by it every day waiting for that to come in. I know we communicated the sense of urgency of getting this done by a certain date. And so I guess I'm a little dismayed that we didn't jump on it right away. I guess, if we don't allow this, and I'd love to hear from the chiefs as well. I know Ronnie's not here, but their input on what their recommendation is on this. But also want to know, if we don't allow the access, will emergency vehicles still be allowed to use the temporary road? Would that still be a way of getting to houses? What happens if the street is blocked, or can we get guaranteed that the street would not be blocked? And what would happen to the residents that if they are locked in there? So that's kind of my hodgepodge of
Okay.
questions for
Well,
a lot of different people.
we have chiefs from both departments. Who, either of you care to address Alderman Weggy's concerns about the safety and the ability to access White without the easternmost road?
Good evening, everybody. Since the closure of Manchester Road, obviously, we've been concentrating in this area. And as Swim Club closed, obviously, we also pushed into that area as well. Since school let out, tons of little kids on bikes. The whole bike racks are full all day, which is a great thing. But what we asked our officers to do and supervisors to do is go up there and actually watch and see, are they seeing what they would construe as kids being at risk in terms of people driving too fast or one of the construction vehicles coming out on the Swim lane. After hours of sitting up there, they're coming back saying, we're not seeing that. They have a spotter when they're working. There was a complaint today that we went and investigated that their spotter wasn't out on Swim Club Lane. And talking to the Luth representative that's here, and he can explain it a little more, they offloaded something over on White and moved the spotter over on White. That's why some photos were taken today and there was nobody there. So we have monitored the area, and in short, we're really not seeing a huge risk at this point. Doesn't mean an accident couldn't happen, but that in and out right there on the Swim Club Lane is a hump, big drop. You can see it in the photos. So coming out of there, these cars and trucks are going slow anyway. And at this point, we're not seeing anything that really strongly indicates that it's causing a big risk. It's not a good idea, but it's part of the construction process, I guess, that we're going through here that we're going to have to adjust somehow.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for Chief Spees? Bernie, do you have anything you would like to add?
Good evening. Just to add, the temporary road, the little access that's there, we did a complaint, or at least a concern, was brought to the fire department with that. We took the fire truck, the ambulance, and both staff vehicles, and we were able to access White from that temporary road. That was before the Jersey barrier was put in place. Obviously, with that Jersey barrier being there, we can move it. It might take 3 people, but it would add a little bit to the response time. But if the systems and protections that are in place that were agreed to with Luth spotters, and if the barriers are not there, Jersey barrier, or that big highway sign that's there right now, which is easily moved, we can access both ends. Depending on what the address is, we'll come in from one way or actually use Swim Club. So we're comfortable with the access road, and we've actually used it in a non-emergent situation to test it and make sure. So no damage to the vehicle and access is available.
What about Alderman Weggy's question about if the extension is no longer there? What does that, how does that affect your response time, if any?
The temporary road,
Yeah, if that's no longer there,
if we have to come in through.
off of Brentwood.
Off of Brentwood.
I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah, it would be no different than it was previous, as long as there's no restrictions on White coming off of Brentwood. I mean, our response times would be the same. Right now, that temporary road, it makes it a little bit easier to get onto to the far south end of White, but it's about the same, because we're using Rosalie, Eulalie and Rosalie to get down through there. So residential street versus a straight shot off of Brentwood Boulevard and then right down White. So probably a wash. But if the temporary road's gone, yeah, any address on White will have to access off of Brentwood.
Do you have any concerns about the White being blocked? I know we saw that early on in this construction. I know you had to go over there a couple times and get it unblocked. Any concerns with that happening if they're not allowed to use this egress road?
Yeah, obviously, from a public safety standpoint, our stance is that we should have free movement on the street, be able to access. So we need to be able to get in one end or the other, ideally both, at some point in the future. If White does connect literally to Swim Club regularly, okay. But right now, that access road for the far south end works for us, and then off of Brentwood as well. If we block off White, then yes, we'll have concerns, and we'll go through the same process we did with this one. Access both ends, see what works best for us, and then make sure that our apparatus can access it.
Are you put on notice when there is a complete shutdown of White? You're told in advance, FYI, we're gonna be taking up both lanes or there'll be no through access to the easternmost part of White?
Yeah, usually if the road's gonna be completely blocked, it's for a very short amount of time, and they usually have a spotter there. They're able to move equipment pretty fast if they know we're coming, but for a complete shutdown, historically, that's not the case. But we will have communication with the site manager and kind of walk through what our plan of attack would be.
And I'm talking about specifically this project on White. So let's say hypothetically, Luth needs to, as I looked at it today, I think there's the southernmost lane isn't open. Is that correct? I mean, you're down to one lane on White. So let's say hypothetically, they need to use some heavy equipment to block the northern lane on White. It's just a piece of heavy equipment. Are you told about that? Is the department told about that before they block off that north lane?
Historically, we get notified. However, for a short time frame, for 10 minutes, like we have to move a truck or whatever, probably not.
Okay, and that's all I'm trying to get to is if, again, hypothetically, if there's an incident halfway down White and the department decides to access White off of Brentwood, and you're heading east on White, and all of a sudden you see there's a heavy piece of equipment that's blocking where you need to go. You're not they don't necessarily tell you that beforehand because it's temporary. Is that what I'm hearing?
Sometimes, correct. Now, if it's going to be a half-a-day project,
Sure.
yeah, they'll let us know. And then, if that's the case, yes, we will have to have that temporary access. We have to be able to access the road from one end or the other.
Sure. Okay. I'm sorry, Alderman Waggy, were you done?
For now, I'll let others ask, and I might have some more.
Alderman Gould.
Yeah, I just, as a point of clarification, the agreement that we had with the temporary access was never, even if we said, okay, your use, the contractor's use is up, the agreement was always that public safety vehicles can use it at any time while it's in its existing form until the construction's over, and then it goes back to more of a walking path redone. So I don't understand why, even if we don't grant the extension, why the fire department or even the police department wouldn't be able to use that if needed. I mean, that was part of the agreement I thought that we had, so correct me if I'm wrong.
The fire department has a right to move its vehicles wherever it wants to go. They can use public roads, private roads, sidewalks, skyhooks. They can get whatever they want to do to get where they need to go.
So it's not a concern. To me, it's not a
Called the
factor.
fireman's rule, as a matter of fact.
That's a fantastic rule.
Pretty broad
So to me,
interpretation.
it's really not a factor of whether we decide to create, grant the extension or not, because you all will have access if you need it.
Yeah, that temporary road that's there now, or walking path, I mean, yes, we can drive on that, and we will drive on it if we need to. Obviously, we try to use the paved road as much as possible, concrete paved road, but in times of need, yes, we would come in from that end if need be.
Anyone else? Alderwoman Sims.
If this extension weren't granted, do you have any concerns? And I guess I'd extend it to Chief Speece as well. You know, the dangers of that may go with, you know, these large trucks just being able to come in and out of accessing White from only Brentwood versus being able to go through onto high school and then, you know, I guess exiting, looping onto, swim club and then onto Rosalie. One seems safer than the other.
If you follow the posted speed limit and the safety plans that are in place for spotters and apparatus and equipment movement, I don't think it would be any different than any other construction site. Ideally, yeah, if we could keep stuff off of there, but if you grant the extension, it won't affect our operations because essentially we'll be doing what we've been doing for the last 4 weeks.
Does one option, I mean, to me, I feel like I'm choosing between, like, what's the better bad option? In terms of,
if it
because
allays
I
your
think
fears,
there's
whichever option you choose, I will be able to provide service as long as the communication pathway remains open.
But does having, being able to have those trucks come from Brentwood and proceed onto Swim Club Lane and then loop out to Rosalie or Eulalie, as the case may be, is that, in your mind, safer or more dangerous than
Well, you have
I'm accessing
large
from
construction
Brentwood and
equipment
then I
going
have
through
to
a residential neighborhood.
Right,
So-
but versus having to, they access it, because I've seen it, I see it every day, because I go to Starbucks all the time. But having to turn down White and then, I guess, back up and leave, and exit via Brentwood, like, which, in your mind, is safer?
You're talking about traffic flow issues. I'm not a traffic control engineer, but if you stop a large truck and you have to back it up, that impedes progress. But again, our concern is if you're following the posted speed limit, obviously you try to keep large equipment out of a residential area as much as possible. But since this is a residential construction site, we really don't have a whole lot of options.
I don't have any other questions.
Alderman Weggie.
This is for Chief Speece, but so we had today and yesterday where the road was not allowed to be used during normal work days. My understanding that residents were continuing to move the Jersey barrier, learned that word tonight, and use the road anyway. Did any of your officers observe anything, or have you heard anything about that?
We did not see that, but we were told that. And had we seen it, we would have stopped it. I think that's the messaging that we could do with those are residents obviously doing it.
Yeah.
Messaging on next door might help that. I could touch on.
Yeah, I'm good, thanks.
Real quick. We struggle on Brentwood Boulevard with Starbucks.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
We struggle with Starbucks crowd anyway. This will exasperate it if we're backing up and the issue isn't right there on the residential street necessarily for safety, it's Brentwood. Because you're gonna have a flow issue on Brentwood, especially in the mornings. So it potentially could cause more of a backup on Brentwood than we have already. Because of all you people who go to Starbucks. So.
I don't use, that's not how I access Starbucks. Point of order.
Alderman Shelton.
Can I ask the Luth representative a question? So I'll admit I haven't gone by every day during the construction hours, but it looks like work is progressing east down White at least. Is this still, kind of touching on what Alderman Simmons was talking about, are you still gonna, if this isn't, the extension isn't granted, are you still going to be, these trucks are gonna be at the top of White by Starbucks, having to back out onto Brentwood? I know I personally have concerns, and especially in Ward 4 we were dealing with, Brentwood was backed up, as Chief mentioned. It seems to be getting worse and worse. So if we're adding these trucks, still backing out. So I guess my point is it, as it progresses, does it get any better? Is it still always gonna be the same problem?
It's a bit of a give and take. Now that the excavation of the area we're at is shallower, we have less spoils removal. So the other issue with that is though, is that we are having to, for instance, the Monday or Tuesday, I'm sorry, we had to back trucks basically from Brentwood and White all the way back through to the construction area itself. So that brings a little bit of an issue of congestion with residents, access issues, things like that. So it's a bit of a give and take. But initially, if we don't get the extension, it's going to be what we're forced to do. And given that we are rather close to mainline excavation, given the large majority of the large pipe in the ground is done, we still have areas where we are going to be making connections in the street, and it's going to be a similar issue. If that answers your question. Okay.
Alderman Sims.
If this extension isn't granted, how long do you estimate it will take for the work to be completed on White?
If I can assume good weather, basically right now what we're looking at, we have about a week of structures to put in at the end of White, or the end of our run at White, which is about midway through. We have another week of sanitary laterals and probably a third week for miscellaneous cleanup, site prep, things like that, for us to start moving off and going up the alleyway in front of, well, I guess say to the side of Starbucks itself. So things will move on as planned. If we have this, it just kind of gives the residents more of a benefit. Then I don't want to say, not to say that we don't benefit from it as well, but it just eases the amount of construction traffic because we are physically having to back a dump truck 300 some odd feet back up White instead of a straight shot through and back out in the swim club.
Right, but assuming good weather, and that's a big assumption, what do you estimate that project to be? Is it 2 weeks? Is it 3 weeks? Is it a
3
month?
weeks right now is realistic, given that 1 week of general cleanup, which we're not going to expect any major type of trucking in the area. But as of it stands, I would say 2 weeks for the majority of the work to be completed for us to move on to restoration and cleanup and eventually move off to other areas of the site.
This request for an extension is only through June 10th, which by this point is 10 days away, a week from Friday. What do you, will you be done in that time, or are we going to be back here again for another extension?
My understanding would be it would be for Monday. We've kind of lost this week as is, so that'll be the discretion of you folks, obviously. But from what we've planned internally is that we have a certain point of sanitary laterals to tie in next week. Once that's completed, we'll move on to the final structures because we can't basically tie in people's sewer to a untapped main without the possibility of causing some issues. So 2 weeks from Monday, we should have everything buttoned up that we need. That would be beneficial for the road. And then after that, our conversations with our folks internally, they feel like it really is kind of a moot point at that stage, that whether or not we need it after 2 weeks is really kind of a non-event.
Well, as written, the extension, if I'm not mistaken, is just to June 10th. So is that, will you not need that egress after June 10th?
Basically, where our big concern is we want to get a certain section of sanitary laterals tied in. We're going to have to make connections basically coming across the street, and that's going to be another point where trucks have to back all the way up. And once that work is complete, my internal staff and our on-site crew feel comfortable that the egress road will no longer be necessary for us to move forward with construction at a pace that we would normally try to accomplish. Simply put, yes. To 10th would be fine. Any days at this point for us to keep moving are beneficial.
Okay.
Alderman Gould.
Yes, I've got a few questions for you as well. I think, you know, what I'm dismayed, I guess, is a good word that Alderman Wege used about is when we talked about the granting access, I remember I think it was in the Public Works meeting, we asked if you were granted access, how quickly would you be working and get that road done? And your response was the day after. It took 2 weeks for you guys to actually build that road and start accessing it, right? So I think there's a little concern there, and was the project not planned to where you could immediately start with this because it was so rushed to get us to approve it. And then in that approval, there was a signage recommendation that had exit only. So, you know, it was always meant, in my opinion, always seen as an egress only, not an ingress. We've had some reports with people going in, whether it's residents or you all. What happened this morning was not only wasn't not access allowed, but it was several vehicles going into the job site from Swim Club. So I guess, you know, none of what the details that we asked you for, to me, really have been followed through on. So what assurance do I have with extending that we're gonna, you know, have these things in place?
The issue this morning, I can speak to that. We didn't have no active crews on site this morning. There was no one physically working on White. What they were doing was simply dropping off a piece of equipment, a smaller piece of equipment, to limit the amount of footprint needed for us to do excavation in the street. The gentlemen who dropped off the equipment were instructed to basically do so at White and Brentwood. But given that I'm assuming it was probably around 8 o'clock in the morning, traffic was very busy. You're driving a 55 to 60-foot truck, roughly, and they took it upon themselves to use Swim Club as the point of egress for the piece of equipment up on White itself.
Ingress, yeah.
That was not what was planned, but unfortunately, that's what happened, and nothing much to say on that one.
And I think that, you know, without proper signage, the fact that there's only just one of the Jersey barriers and it just says road closed, there isn't, you really don't see that sign until you get down to the exit, and really to where you're almost making the turn. There's supposed to be an exit sign only. There's supposed to be 2 Jersey barriers, one at the top of White, one at the bottom of where the path is. According to this from the previous meeting, there's supposed to be a do not enter sign. There's supposed to be 2 trucks entering ahead. There's supposed to be spotters. So all of that failed. And when our residents come down, there aren't spotters. They're moving signs. And I think that's the biggest concern that I have is when you're not watching, when you're not able to be accountable to the traffic coming out of it or into it, who's watching to make sure that no kids or vehicles are having a conflict?
And I must ask, is there a specific time where they saw no spotters? Basically, anytime we have construction vehicles exiting White on the Swim Club.
Well, this
there was
morning,
some-
obviously, it
This
got out
morning-
of your control and wasn't
There
where
was
they were
no
supposed to
crews
be.
working on site, yes, and there was no excuse for that one. The gentlemen took it upon themselves to make that decision, but I can assure you every day that we have had active construction on site, there has been a spotter anytime a construction vehicle of any sort has exited White onto Swim Club, obviously outside of today. And to the signage and everything, I have to dig into it further. It's one of those things, shoulda, coulda, did it not? I can't tell you with 100% certainty. I can't visit site every day as I wish I could, but we try to make it as obvious as possible to all citizens involved that this is something that you don't want to approach. It's a construction area of sorts, so I really can't give you 100% say, yes, we should have done this, but it's unfortunately where the situation was, and that's.
And then my last question, you had up until Friday to work on, use the road and work on the site. Were you guys working Friday?
Friday, there was an unmarked gas service hit in the afternoon hours, and Spire was out doing repair on that. So instead of working around Spire and their fix, our crews made the decision and management to say we're going to pull off the site, start general cleanup before the holiday weekend, given that it was our last day to use the road itself. So it's kind of an unfortunate event, but we got essentially a 3/4 of a day working on Friday.
Alderman Lockmuller.
Evan, with the extension to the 10th, does that also include being able to restore that area? Because you're going to need heavy equipment in there to put that temporary roadway back as it was.
That is not our current understanding. We are going to simply close the road for our access. As you stated, the emergency vehicles will still have access to that, but it will be closed to pedestrian traffic, as it were, if working after hours per se. But we do not have any plans currently to come right back and restore this area. The plan will be, once we get all of the excavation done, to come back and do full road restoration, and obviously the restoration needed on the path, whether it be Swim Club, White, or the walking path itself.
Thank you.
Alderman Weggie.
So Evan, when, in those 10 days before June 10th, will you be blocking residents? I mean, will they be impeded from getting out? Will they have to wait for things to finish while you're doing these? Or will they be stuck on White?
Anything we do, kind of the protocol is we have to have one active lane of traffic open no matter what. If there's a certain situation where a resident needs to get to a vehicle or we're temporarily in the way of their driveway, we stop all work, move out of the way to make sure that certain individual can get out and on to carry out with whatever their business may be.
Okay.
So-
And then, and maybe this is a Dan question, but if we don't grant the additional access, what's going to actually happen? Are we going to put that big Lego block back on the road that would, because it seems to me that would prevent emergency vehicles from going. But how do we stop residents from just moving the sign and driving up and down there? To Alderman Gould's point, that you don't have a spotter when it's just a private citizen. And again, we shouldn't expect Luce to do that. What is this going to look like if we don't agree to this? Putting you on the spot, putting everybody on the spot probably. What are we going to do?
The only other thing I thought, I mean, since that's actually a type 3 barricade, you know, it's got the holes across the bottom, you could bolt it down. You know, you just drill a sleeve, bolt it down. I mean, somebody, if they really want to muscle up, I guess they could get a pry bar and pull it loose, but at least make it more difficult.
And then would that prevent a fire truck or an ambulance from getting back there, or they just,
Oh, his fire truck will knock that bolt right out. It would just fold that barricade over. I'm not worried.
can you swing by and get the Alderman if that happens? Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? Oh, I'm sorry, yes, Alderman O'Neill.
If this is listed till June 10th and we have too much rain for you to work, what happens?
Simply lose access to the road.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Not, then I guess, did we, I'm sorry, I lost track. Did we get a motion to approve? Yeah, we did. We had a motion and a second to go forward with the resolution 1367. No further discussion. Need a roll call on this? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Let's do a roll call. I think it's pretty clear, but let's just make clear. Roll call, please.
Okay. Alderwoman Sims,
Nay.
Alderman Weggie,
No.
Alderman Gould,
Nay.
Alderman Lockmiller,
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill, Alderman Shelton.
Yes.
By a vote of 3 to 3.
Do I cast the tie on this? I'm going to say no.
Motion fails.
Okay, thank you. That brings us down to item 7, new business, and that's bill number 6395. Can we get it first read by title only, please?
By first reading an ordinance approving an asset and access agreement. All utilities related to the and 2916 Avenue and 292.
Great, thank you. And who's Craig here? Oh, there, I'm sorry, Craig, I didn't see you.
Good evening. So these properties are being deeded from MSD to the city of Brentwood based on the MSD Brentwood agreement you guys executed last year. That process is taking longer than expected, and the Brentwood Bound Project really needs to begin work on those properties as we work on the event lawn building and bringing the utilities out of that building and connecting over to Brazos, both for gas and for electric. So because of MSD's process taking longer, and us needing to access those properties and do work to mitigate delays on the event lawn building, MSD said you can work on the property, just sign this agreement. So that's what you have in front of you.
Alderman Weggie.
Motion to perfect bill number 6395 in the ordinance.
Second.
Second reading.
Or
Need
a second reading.
read.
That's what I meant.
Okay.
Ordinance, motion to make a second reading.
Okay, we have a motion by Alderman Weggie for a second read of bill 6395. Can you get a second?
Second.
Any discussion on that motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, can we get a second read of bill 6395 by title only, please?
Bill number 6395, second reading and consideration for adoption, An ordinance approving an access agreement with Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District to install utilities related to the Brentwood Bound Improvement Project at 2904, 2908, 2914, and 2916 Brazo Avenue and 2924 Mary Avenue.
Now I will entertain a motion to perfect 6395 into ordinance form.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to perfect 6395 in ordinance form. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Alderwoman Sims.
Yes.
Alderman Weggie.
Yes.
Alderman Gould.
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller.
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill. Alderman Shelton.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see, bill number 6395 will become ordinance 5020 when signed by the mayor.
Great, thank you. Brings us down to item 8, citizen comments. Anybody in the audience care to address the board? Again, now is the time to do so. You'll be given up to 3 minutes. Nobody online either?
Nobody online.
Okay, great. Well, I do have a request that we go into closed session for real estate pursuant to RSMO 610.021 subsection 2. Can I get a motion to that effect?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Alderwoman Sims.
Yes.
Alderman Weggie.
Yes.
Alderman Gould.
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller.
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill. Alderman Shelton.
Yes.
Motion carries by a vote
Great.
of 6 to 0.
Thank you.